Hello, fellow fantasy sports fans. This is MFSN's Waiver Wire Show, Basketball Edition. It's basketball season, guys. I'm here with Fantasy Pros expert Andrew Seifer and Ross the Boss.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ross the Boss, and I love talking fantasy basketball with you, cowboy.
You look like you should be sitting in front of a fire with some eggnog.
I thought he looked like Don King, but, whatever.
Oh, well, there's that, too.
I love it. I'm excited for basketball, guys. We're one game in, or already one game in. Can you believe it? And I feel it's been a lifetime already. It's been
unless you're Oklahoma City or Houston, right? They're not one game in yet.
Oh, then it's been a real lifetime. All right, so listen, we're going to go over the rules here. In football, we did 50% ownership was the level. We're actually going 60% because in basketball, there's people on that cusp that are very interesting to talk about it in general. If you have not done so already, please click subscribe and ring the bell for notifications and put your comments below. We're going to make comments on players. You guys are going to have different opinions. We want to know which of us is right, which of us is wrong. So, guys, the way we're going to do this is I have it divided into must-have, because must-own is not okay. You can't own people anymore. You never should have been able to. So, we have must-haves, we have solid pickups, and then we have deeper league ads. Everybody we're going to talk about today are people, though, that we're interested in picking up. It's very interesting at the beginning of the season, though, because we've only seen a couple of games. So you don't know about rotations. You don't know about the minutes that people are playing as much. So in a way, this is a continuation from draft week, which is here are some of the guys that weren't drafted that really should have been. But we've gotten a sneak peek. So, guys, let's go one by one. Let's just talk about, give me one or two must-have players that are out there 60% or below.
Okay, well, I'll start, and maybe this is a little bit of a homer pick for us Cleveland fans out there, but Darius Garland sure looked impressive in that first game. And, he's a second-year player who could be having that second-year breakout. Really looked like a totally different player than he did last season. Just a much more efficient game than he had. Shot the ball very well, which was a problem for him last year, and was pretty aggressive rebounding too, which isn't something he did much of last season. So he really gave some, across-the-board production. And, given how little we have to work with right now, I think a player that has that plausible upside of having a breakout is an interesting player to pick up, get on your roster, and just kind of see where that story goes.
Yeah, there should be like a stat for like a mini triple-double where you get 6 of assists and rebound, because that's what Darius Garland did last time. I have him on my must-have list also. He's the only high upside guy that I have on the must-have list. Interestingly, a lot of the other ones are just ones that they are owned in the league that we play. All of them, all 4 of the other ones I have, but they're below 50% in general. Ross, who do you have?
I like Darius too. He had 33 minutes, and he also had 22 points. He looked fantastic. That's a great one, Andrew. I said this guy's going to be most improved player in the NBA. I love this kid. He went to Duke. His name's Cam Reddish. This kid, he did not have a great year last year. He was hurt a little bit, but he's back this year. Cam Reddish is one of my guys. He's going to be great this year. He's not owned in that many leagues. Pick him up now. Another guy that always gets overlooked, and then people pick him up during the season, is J.J. Redick, Mr. Three-Pointer. He had a big game last night. I love J.J., great Duke player.
I got Redick on my list as a must-have.
JJ's great, and I think he's a must pick up, especially if you're in a league where three-pointers mean something. Pick JJ up.
That's actually something I wanted to say.
He's a great free throw shooter too.
Yeah, 100%. And so, but here's the thing though: when you're playing in an 8 or 9 category league, whatever it is, JJ Redick can win you one of those categories by himself. He just is going to hit tons of threes, and anybody who can hit threes like that is going to be on the floor a lot because of spacing.
And he doesn't hurt you in the percentages, and he doesn't turn the ball over. So he's actually an efficient player, even though, obviously he's not there for blocks or rebounds or anything like that. He contributes in more than just three-pointers.
Yeah, to me, there's 2 kinds of must-have players. They're the kind that could go like supernova and help you win your league. And then there's guys like J.J. Redick, who are just going to be steady. They're going to win you a category or 2. And Marcus Smart is another of those guys, but I think he's over 60% owned. But another guy I have like this is Terrence Ross. I tried to draft Terrence Ross, but I ran out of budgeting money, and Lauren did her ninja move and took him from me. But Terrence Ross, he contributes in everything. He doesn't turn the ball over. He gets 3-pointers. He gets steals. He scores a good amount of points. He's one of those players that just people don't see him because he's like kind of a mid-level guy. But if you look at his rankings, he ranked 62nd overall in the Yahoo numbers last year and 60 the year before. He's very consistent.
You want to own this guy? Was that? Or?
In total value.
Okay,
yes.
Because in per game value, he's more like borderline fringe top 100 kind of guy. I mean, he made my list. He's not a must-have for me. He's more of like a deeper league guy. He has a very similar profile to Redick, actually, but the difference is Redick is good for maybe, another half a three-pointer per game over Ross, and he's also a better free throw shooter. Ross is not a bad free throw shooter, but Redick is even better. So the profile is
similar. It's just like he's kind of like a poor man's Redick, in my opinion.
Okay, I can see that. I mean, he has outranked him, which is interesting. The other thing about him is he's a shooting guard and a small forward. I love that position flexibility. You can play them at the guard position.
Must have to do with total value, because in per game value, I don't like Redick has consistently ranked ahead of Ross. We'll have to look at the numbers on that, though.
We're gonna have to look at the numbers, but Ross does have that shooting guard, small forward, and I'm not talking about you, Ross. Different Ross. Yeah, I saw you get. You were getting all excited.
He can probably make some 3-pointers too, right?
Oh, I'm sure.
Play.
Ross the boss?
I'm a shooting guard. I can play.
I always forget you're left-handed.
I'm left-handed.
All right, so another guy that I have who's also a shooting guard, small forward, and that has that great position eligibility is Joe Ingles. I think I have his name.
Average
right.
Joe, we call him. Average Joe. He's an average
Joe.
Player.
This guy.
He's a shooter. He looked good last night.
And let's make this point. The main thing I'm looking for is minutes. You've got to play minutes, or nothing's going to happen. Obviously, if you're not playing good minutes, you're going to lose those minutes. But a lot of times when I'm looking for a player to pick up, I click on the minute column and it just sorts it by the minutes. And you can see this guy plays 33 minutes and okay, maybe his numbers are, kind of middling, but he's going to be on the floor. So
yeah,
a guy like Ingles, he hits a lot of threes. He gets steals. He gets assists. He's got the position flexibility. He's got great minutes. He ranked 82nd overall last year, 58 the year before. Now we have to look at average stats because that's a different thing. And you do want to pay attention to that because, like Kawhi Leonard, his average stats are probably top 5, but his overall numbers are going to be like 33. So you need to know what you're looking at, but he's another guy I have who is a must-have.
Well,
here's another one, Andrew.
Can I just make another point real quick on that?
Yes, please do.
I do agree with you that minutes are very important, but I think also you want to look at like the sort of per 36 minute production from past seasons too, to get a sense of like how much certain players take advantage of their minutes. And then if you see for example, like one of my next pick after Garland is Alec Burks with the Knicks. And so he was a top 90 player in per game value last year, but he only played like 26 minutes a night. In his first game this season, he played 32 minutes. He didn't start, but he's leading the second unit and he's going to be playing over 30 minutes every night. So if he could be a top 90 guy in 26 minutes, in 32 minutes, I think he could be a top 60, maybe even a top 50 guy. So it's like, whereas like a player like Harrison Barnes, who I have as like a more of a deep league guy, minutes have never been a problem for him. He always gets over 30 minutes, close to 35 minutes a night. He's just not that fantasy friendly a skill set. So it's like, even though he gets all those minutes, he's still a fringe top 1 at best, just because of the stats he gives you.
He had 42 minutes last night, Harrison Barnes.
And he's still,
42 first game.
But it really is true. If you're playing 42 minutes and you're playing about as well as Nerlens Noel does in 15 minutes, it's really the same. I just think minutes are a good way of sorting who might have value.
I definitely look at it.
Yeah, then I agree. You want to look at efficiency and what kind of numbers they're putting up. Nerlens Noel I have as a solid pickup as opposed to a must-have. I actually would have him in the must-have group if his minutes were clear. But he's switched teams. He's playing alongside Mitchell Robinson. I don't know what I'm excited about him. I roster him. I'm sorry. God, I have to break this habit. But he definitely has that per game efficiency. If his numbers go up in minutes, he's going to be great. And I also think this is one thing to keep in mind at the beginning of the season. If the numbers are low, but they have that per game efficiency, I think you want to hold on to them. There's going to be injuries. People are going to go on the COVID list. Those minutes are going to end up going up. People aren't going to play in back-to-backs. So I wouldn't panic in this first week if you've got a good player, generally speaking, who had low minutes. I have one more must-have, and Andrew, you'll like this because you roster him. Will Barton. He's another shooting guard, small forward. He does a little of everything. He has great efficiency. He's got minutes in the 30s. He's got that position flexibility, and he has ranked. I mean, I sometimes just go by the numbers. I'm like, this guy's numbers look good. But if you played 50 to 60 games or more and your average stats are good, I want you on my team. Will Barton he's constantly cut and picked up. He probably won't be cut from you.
No,
because
I'm holding him all season. Yeah. He's a very underrated player, and he's a very consistent player. And, I think some people might be freaking out because he's not starting anymore. But that doesn't matter because he's still getting the minutes. And, sometimes in addition to minutes, you're looking at usage. And sometimes guys who don't start end up getting more usage because they're clearly the best player on the floor with the second unit. They still get some time with the starters later in the game, that sort of thing. And he's one of those players that contributes a lot of those more under the radar stats, the defensive stats and things like that really boost his value. So I'm definitely with you 100% on that, and Nerlens Noel as well. For me, I actually use the 50% threshold, so those guys less than 60. But I'm also looking at a guy who hasn't played yet. Darius Bazley with Oklahoma City is going to be a starter, and he's going to get really big minutes. Speaking of minutes, so he's got to have some growth to his game because he wasn't a great shooter last year. And I've talked before about not loving inefficient players. So I want to see how he shoots, but he's going to have every opportunity to be an impact fantasy player. So that's the kind of player that I like to have on my roster at the start of the season, just to see how he does. Because he's a talented player. He can contribute in points, rebounds, and blocks. And should that team just needs people to step up. So I think he actually might be the number 2 option in that offense going forward.
Ross, have we missed anybody on your must-have list?
I do fantasy basketball a little different than you guys. I like taking players who are not really proven quite yet, haven't really got their name in the NBA quite yet. So I'm taking players that I think will get playing time, that the coaches have talked about, those guys have been in the league for years. Alec Burks destroyed me in Utah. I picked him up. He was horrible, a horrible guard for me.
We'll see,
he lost me. He lost me that year, just so you know. So that being said, I like taking guys that are not really proven yet, but they got to prove something because they want to be in the NBA for a long time. And the guy I like, Doc Rivers, loves this guy. He's been talking about the whole preseason. He's a must pick up. Listen to me right now. He has a great first name. His name is Shake. Shake. Say it with me. Shake Milton is his name. Shake Milton is the real deal. I'm telling you this right now. He plays for the Sixers. Doc Rivers loves this guy. He loves him. This is a guy that if you pick him up, he can really pan out to be a great player for you. You listen to me, Ross the Boss, you'll win your league. And I love taking chances like that right now with the waiver wire. Right now with the waiver wire is like the Wild West. Everything's open. Go and get it. Get players that you see on TV. Go ahead. If you let them, pick them up. But I like trying the untested. And Shake Milton for me is a must pick up.
Well, I don't really disagree with you on that.
You don't disagree, or if you
I don't disagree
right
with
now.
you. I'm
okay.
picking up some untested guys right now and just seeing where it goes if they're talented.
Love it.
No, this is the time of year. I think it's about balance, though. You want to have maybe 2 of those guys, but you do want to bring in the guys that are just floating out there, like Joe Ingles, who can keep you.
Joe Ingles,
really
as I said,
I
call him Average Joe. He's an average player. He's not going to win. He's not going to win you any leagues. He's not going to be like this 30-point scorer. He's not going to have a bunch of steals. He'll be average Joe.
But I agree with you. He's different for me than Alec Burks. I'm not high on Alec Burks, so we've got 2 against 1.
I'm Joe Ingles, so I think you have a stronger point talking about JJ Redick and Will Barton, who are proven
I like JJ
to be really valuable on a per game basis. I don't think Ingles has that same track record, but I agree there should be a balance. And but another upside guy that I have in my must haves this is the last one for me, is Patrick Williams with the Bulls.
Love it. He's my next name. He's great.
It wasn't the strongest draft, so we have to keep that in mind. But that just means we don't really know which of the lottery picks are going to be the breakout. And he got 33 minutes in his first game. He gave really across the board production. That's a team that just needs him to step up, and he's ready to do it. So we'll see what kind of a player he is. We don't really know yet, but I'm willing to find out with him on my roster.
He's my rookie of the year, Patrick Williams. I think you're right, 100% right with Patrick Williams. I was going to bring him up later in the show, but for me, I think he's a good guy to grab. 100%. Good name.
Great tips. So let's check in with the audience, and we want to find out from you, who were your must-haves that we didn't get? Did we overrate anybody in your mind? We want to hear from you. Let us know. And now we're going to move on to the solid pickups. Now, it's interesting because a guy like Terrence Ross, I think some people have him in the deeper league ads. Some have him in solid pickups. I'm higher on him than you guys are. But so we're not going to really parse this out. But you also have to remember, we don't know the size of your league. So if you have a 10-team league and we're telling you this guy is a must pickup, it might not be as much. We play in a 12-team league. So this is based on 12-team leagues. You got to keep that in mind. But solid pickups are ones that should be good for probably the back end of rosters for a 10-team league, and certainly good for a 12-team league that you want to have. Guys, let's nominate some names of players that you see floating out there. These are probably all going to be below 50%. But there could be some between 50 and 60.
Yeah.
And
Dan, I do want to make one quick point about that also. I believe that, obviously different leagues have different formats, but the schedule is really important in weekly leagues. So
that's true.
I don't think you should get that wedded to the back end of your roster on a fantasy basketball team. You want to be shuffling players in and out of those last 3 to 5 spots on your roster. So like those must-have guys, that's like where you're kind of fishing for a guy who might actually be someone that's on your team all year that actually can provide that long-term value. But then when you get to these mid-range guys, I'm more interested in just sort of, do they have a 4-game week coming up the next week or something like that?
Right. Will they help you win?
Yeah, exactly.
Occasionally you'll get guys that have a 5-game week. And usually you're going to want to do that. And then you're going to have those guys that have a 2-game week. And if they're on the back end of your roster, cut them loose for that week. Generally speaking, that's going to really harm your week. So that's a great point. One guy I have in my solid pickups list, he's very similar to those other players I mentioned, but he's a tier below. Danny Green he always performs pretty well. I know it's not exciting. It's not the Ross the boss. This guy is going to emerge and become a league wrecker. But Danny Green is always solid. However, he's also the kind of guy that I'll cut in a given week. He'll float in and off of my roster. But I do think he's a solid pickup in the weeks where he's playing 4 games.
I used to be a huge Danny Green fan for fantasy. But his usage has really dropped off the last couple of years, and I just don't trust him to get enough playing time to have that value that he used to have.
It's very possible, and he just switched teams also, as Danny Green tends to do. He tends to switch teams and win championships.
That tells you something too, right? That so many teams are willing to move on from him.
It does, but it also tells you something that he's won so many championships. He's a very smart player. I'm not saying he's at the top of my solid pickups list. He just jumped out at me, and maybe it's because I love the shooting guard, small forward one.
Well, I'll talk about one guy.
I'm curious.
One guy who used to be a complete fantasy stud, and now he's almost 36 years old, but he looked pretty good in his first game, and that's Paul Millsap. He had a really good game. He played heavy minutes, which you will have to see how long that can last for a 36-year-old guy. But I think he's, again, it's not a sexy name. You're not going to get that vintage Paul Millsap. But I think you can get a top 100 kind of a player when he's playing that sort of, if he's playing 30, 35 minutes a night, we know this guy can play basketball, right? It's just a question of how long he'll be on the court, whether he can stay healthy all year, those sorts of things. But he's a proven commodity.
Now, here's another thing that's going to come up in our waiver wire segment. We were talking about this going in. Unlike in football, there's a lot of international players. So there's a lot of names that we might get the pronunciation completely wrong. And I'm going to jump in the deep end here. Nemanja Bjelica. I don't even know if I'm saying that name right. How do you say his name? Anyways, I own him. He's on the Kings. The Kings are a hot mess of minutes. I don't know who's going to play what, but the guy was ranked 35th among all players last year. And the year before that, he wasn't bad, 91st. He gives you some of everything. He's underrated, but the question is the minutes. He's a guy I could see emerging into somebody that you own the whole year. And he's also somebody I could see cutting. It depends on how it goes.
Yeah.
Ross, what do you think?
I have him lower on my tier list. I mean, there's a couple guys I like above him. I like Dylan Brooks from Memphis. Dylan Brooks went to the University of Oregon. He had 16 points. He had 6 assists. He had 7 rebounds. He's a player that all around, he's just getting better every year. He's getting better and better and better. And he's playing on a Memphis team, which don't have any big stars. They don't have a guy that you're going, oh my God, I want to see. I mean, they do have Jay Moran, I guess, but he's already taken. But Dylan Brooks is somebody I love. Mason Plumlee of Detroit is a guy that's going to be a double-double guy. If you need rebounds on your team, that's a guy to pick up. He'll have 10, 12, 14 rebounds a game. He plays a lot of minutes, but for those are the two guys I kind of like right now.
With Plumlee, I agree. He's a great bet to be a double-double kind of a guy. The question is, I mean, his free throw percentage is atrociously bad. So it's like
he's getting better. He's working on it in the
offseason. But I think he makes a lot more sense if you're punting free throw percentage. Like if you took like Giannis in the first round or something like that, and
right.
you went with a bunch of Drummond type players, and you're basically just already seeding that category, then go ahead, pick up Plumlee and put him right in your lineup, because he's going to get the big minutes. He's going to get double digits in points and close to it in rebounds every night. I agree. And then Brooks, the thing that jumped out to me was that 6 assists you mentioned, because last year he was kind of a little bit of an empty scorer. He didn't have those other categories that you could rely on. But if he can give you that 5 or 6 assists a night, then that's going to be a huge spike for his value. So that's a really interesting thing to watch going forward. Another guy for me, and this is another hard one to pronounce, Dan, Ivica Zubac, who is
I
on
like
my
him,
team.
Clipper.
Yeah. And so the interesting thing with the Clippers is that they last year when they had Montrezl Harrell, he came off the bench at center, and he ended up playing more minutes than the starter. The role now that we're seeing with Zubac, because he came off the bench behind Serge Ibaka in the first game, but he played more minutes than Ibaka. And Zubac is another one of these players I was talking about who, if you look at their per 36 minute value, it's very high. He only played like 18 minutes a game last year. But if he plays 26 minutes a game like he did in the first game, he's going to be quite valuable. So, and he's a player that can, help you in those big man stats, rebounds, blocks, those sort of things. But he was, they were using him in crunch time. They showed a lot of faith in him, and it seems like it's something that we can believe in going forward.
I have him on my list as well. I have a somewhat similar player that I'm wondering about. I don't know exactly where to put him in terms of solid pickup, or is he a deeper league ad? McGee is constantly he's a block specialist, he'll give you rebounds too. His free throw percentage isn't even that bad. So there's a lot of potential upside, and his numbers can surprise you, because look, I have Miles Turner, and he got 8 blocks in one game. I've basically won that category on one game and one player. Now, obviously you can't get Miles Turner off the wire, but you can get a guy like JaVale McGee, and he's going to put up a lot of value if he's getting the minutes. And I just don't have a clear picture on that. I also don't have a clear picture on, are the Cavs going to be any good? My expectation was they weren't going to be, but they look good.
And when Kevin Love comes back, how does that? I mean, McGee didn't play huge minutes anyway, but I think he's definitely 4th among their big men on the depth chart. So, but yeah, that's the interesting thing when you're, blocks in particular in fantasy is an interesting category, because the guys who tend to give you those are these big men that often don't play major minutes. They play, 15, 20 minutes, but they can get you 2 or 3 blocks in that little amount of time. So it's always a question of how much you're willing to sacrifice in the other categories to get those blocks. Pirtle with San Antonio is another guy like that, Boucher with Toronto, but I think he can maybe contribute more in some other categories as well. But there's these block specialists that you have to kind of, hold your nose and put them in your lineup sometimes.
Yeah. Well, actually you made an important point. Like if you're already punting free throws and there's a guy out there who's terrible at free throws but blocks a lot of shots, that player is more valuable to your team. And so it really depends on how much you need the blocks. So we're going to talk about a lot of players in this, but what you should be thinking about is which of these players fits for my team. For must have, for looking for those high upside guys that Ross is talking about, everybody should be going for those guys. For these guys, it's really about your team fit. Do you need 3-pointers? Do you need steals? Do you need blocks? You got to pay attention to how your team is doing.
And the schedule that those players have coming up as well.
That's right.
One other situation I wanted to talk about. There's 2 players on the Spurs that one of them I have in this category and one I have as a deeper league guy, but they're both sort of benefiting from Derek White being out because he had toe surgery and he's going to be out for all we know is weeks. We don't know how many weeks. But Keldon Johnson is one, and then Lonnie Walker is the other, and they both did quite well in that first game. I think Keldon Johnson is the better pickup of the two, just because I think that he might be a little bit more sustainable in terms of having value even once White comes back. He might take a little bit of a hit, but not as big a hit. I think Walker is more like the direct backup to White. So when White comes back, he's going to pretty much have all of his value evaporate. So he's more of like a streamer kind of short-term ad. I don't know what you guys think about that, or if you have other names you want to bring up.
I don't like Popovich. Destroys me in fantasy. I stay away from San Antonio Spurs. He puts different minutes for different players, different games. He's not predictable with playing time, especially with the star players. He'll play somebody for 20 minutes. The next game he'll do 35 minutes. You don't know what's going on with him. I stay away from Spurs. I don't draft any of them. I don't want them on my
certainly
team.
Rookies too. Like Vassell looks like he's not going to get a lot of playing time at all.
No,
I was intrigued by him, but
I mean, I'd love to talk about deeper leagues. I have some really good names for deeper leagues. If you guys want to talk about that.
Let's move to deeper league ads. I think it's time. Again, please put your comments in about any solid pickups we missed. There were some on my list, but I'm going to just talk about them in the deeper league ads because they are kind of borderline. Ross, you're all excited about this. I don't want to get in the way of your steam. You got a full head of steam. Let's go.
Well, I'm excited. I like this player was drafted this year. He fell in the draft. I mean, he was like waiting there, and no one was taking him. And I said, I can't believe this guy's not being drafted. He was such a great shooter at Iowa State last year. And it's Tyrese Halliburton. And he is somebody that you should pick up and stack in your league, have him there. He had a good game last night. I think he played 30 minutes, which is great for a rookie. And I think he had 12 points. He had a bunch of rebounds and assists, but he's just going to get better and better. He's getting the playing time as a rookie, which is not, it's really hard to get playing time, as you know, as a rookie. This guy is somebody that you should pick up. I'd rather have him than Joe English. That's me, Ross the Boss, because I like to gamble on players. With Joe English, you'll know what you get every day. You know what they'll have. You know what he'll do. Tyrese is something else. I think he's special. We'll see what he does.
I agree with you, Ross. I have Halliburton ahead of Inglis as well. He was one of the guys that I had in my deep league pickups. And then another rookie that's interesting, going back to the Cavaliers, is Isaac Okoro.
Oh, that's what I was going to talk about.
All right, I'll let you talk about him, Dan. I know you're
no. You take it away, and then I'll make my points.
Kid. I mean, I don't have much to say. I just think he was the 5th pick in the draft. He looked very athletic and like he could be, make plays. And there's, he's ahead of Jetty Osman on the depth chart already after one game. So he's going to get an opportunity, an extended opportunity, and should only get better as he gets more experience. So I just think this fits in the same category with, the Tyrese Halliburtons and the Patrick Williamses and all these rookies that it's just, let's see what they can do. They're going to get a chance.
I'm just going to add something though, and this is something we talked about in football. You want to eyeball these guys some. It's a good idea to watch the game, because people who have watched Isaac Okoro, they say he does everything. He's one of these hustle players. He's one of these guys who's really smart. How good is he going to be? I don't know, but he's getting. He played one game, but he had minutes in the 30s. But I think the plan is to do that. The Cavs are young. They're going to get out and run with their young guys. So this is one thing that's different about basketball than the other sports. You can have a really bad basketball team and have a lot of value on that team for fantasy anyway. There's plenty of points to go around, plenty of assists, plenty of rebounds. Plays happen all the time in the NBA. It's not like the Jets where they're going to get shut out a lot of the
Sometimes
time.
it's better when the team is bad because it's,
That's true.
they'll let these guys get huge minutes that they would never get if Popovich was their coach, right?
Yeah.
And I, by the way, Ross, I agree with you. Popovich is like the Belichick of basketball. I can't trust him. I mean, he's like Belichick and he's the greatest coach ever, but can't trust him with
Just
with
don't have
those
any
players.
Spurs on your team.
Hey, I like DeMar DeRozan, and he looked pretty good in that first game. So
well, he may be the exception, but even
Aldridge,
so, I
too.
think he's a little bit overrated.
Just
Okay,
pay
so I
attention to the next
have
few games.
here's another team that has an interesting rotation, and we interviewed Mark Cuban, so I'm very interested in some of the Mavericks. Maxi Kleber, I think I'm pronouncing that name right, but I might not be. He gets blocks and threes. It's often a hard combination to get, and he's got a lot of upside. The question is, are the minutes there? And then you've got Dwight Powell. This guy is an efficiency machine. He couldn't stay healthy before. I just don't know if the minutes are there. So the question is, I'd at least have Powell on your watch list.
I liked Dwight
For
Powell
me-
a lot. He only played 12 minutes last night, which doesn't mean anything. But when he was healthy last year, I love the kid. He went to Stanford. He's a very bright kid. He's Canadian too. Don't hold that against him. We don't like Canadians. We know that. We talked about this. But that all being, I'm just kidding. But that all being said, Dwight Powell I like a lot. I'm worried about minutes, Dan. You're 100% right.
Yeah, so you leave him on your watch list. But if his minutes start to go up, if there's an injury, if COVID starts eating into a team in terms of their depth, a guy like Dwight Powell can be huge. So he's not one I would add, whereas Okoro is somebody I would probably add. He's already getting the minutes. Who have we missed, guys? There's all these players like PJ Tucker. He's very, very unsexy pick. Ross would never pick him up. He's 36 years old. But
well, I like
still
Tucker.
putting up the points.
He's a role player. Again, he plays for Houston. I don't have anything against him. I like Enes Kanter for Portland. I think he played a lot of minutes last night.
Yeah, that was surprising.
I'm surprising. I like Kanter a lot. I feel he's a double guy. He'll get your rebounds. He'll get your points. It's not a bad pickup if you need somebody in those two categories. I feel I like McDermott. I like Doug McDermott for Indiana. I think he played a lot of minutes last night also. But the main thing is you got to watch your players' minutes, like we've been saying, we're stressing. If they're not on the court, they're not going to score. So, if you don't shoot, you can't score, like Wayne Gretzky used to say.
You know who played over 40 minutes? Gary Harris.
Did he really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And he used to be a great fantasy player, but he really went off a cliff. So I'm not really recommending him as a pickup right now, but he's the kind of player I would put on my watch list and just see if he can actually get his act back together again, because given the playing time, it's interesting.
We didn't mention Carmelo Anthony. I mean, he used to be like an all-star in this league, and now he got playing time for Portland. He had a pretty good game, but again, he's somebody who's kind of one-dimensional now.
I was going to put him on my drop list, but then I saw he's actually a little
no one
less
has
than 50%
him. No one knows. He's not on
rostered.
anybody's team.
Yeah.
No one has him on the team anyway.
When he gets high minutes, he's got the Harrison Barnes problem, but even worse because his efficiency is so bad.
Yeah,
he was so talented though. But those years have passed. Okay, speaking of which, we're gonna wrap up here.
Oh, there's one more player.
Players.
One more player you should watch.
One more player. All right, one more player,
guys. I promise you, this is a good one. He's not in many leagues either. It's Derrick Rose. Derrick Rose had a great year last year until he got hurt. I had him on my team. He was scoring. He was rebounding. He was doing everything. He got hurt. So just keep a little watch on Derrick Rose.
Yeah, listen.
Lots
I mean,
of
you can play him.
no doubt about that.
You could get a good 20, 25 games out of him. Then he'll probably get hurt, but they could be great games. And winning at any point in the season matters. All right, let's turn a little bit to a couple players that you think are too owned, and we should move on from them. Andrew, you had a couple, it sounded like.
Yeah. So one I think is Spencer Dinwiddie with the Nets. He wasn't really a fantasy factor last season, and that was in 31 minutes a game. And he's not going to get 31 minutes a game this season because Karis LeVert is so much better than him. And whether, no matter who starts, LeVert is going to play more minutes than Dinwiddie. So I think what Dinwiddie did last year was barely like a top 150 guy. And that's like a best case scenario for him. So I think that you can absolutely move on from him. Another guy, this is one rookie that I'm okay dropping, and that's Obi Toppin with the Knicks. I think just the combination of being a lottery pick and being in a major media market has kind of inflated his ownership or roster number, so that a lot of people have him, but he's not. He's terrible on defense. He's not going to get a lot of minutes, maybe like low 20s kind of minutes, and there's not much reason to think that he's going to be an impact player in any category, let alone multiple categories. So I think you can watch him from the waiver wire to see if he puts it together, but I don't think you need to do it from your roster. And then another average Joe Harris, also with the Nets. He's just not the kind of player that you need to be wedded to. So, we were talking before about shuffling through players at the back end of your bench, and you should never miss out on a 4 or 5 game week player to hold Joe Harris on your bench. So I think you can move on.
Well, not only that, but these are back end guys on the Nets, and they added Durant and Kyrie Irving. I mean, there's going to be a lot less minutes to go around. So,
and then I got one more too. This is like the weirdest. Sometimes NBA players, I think, have like the strangest injuries, or they miss games because of things you've never heard of people missing games for. But Rui Hachimura has conjunctivitis in both of his eyes, and he's out for 3 weeks with that.
What's that mean? I don't even know what that means.
Pink eye.
He's got eye gunk.
It's pink eye.
He's got eye gunk. So he's
contagious.
He's missing 3 weeks with eye gunk. He didn't do anything last year to make you think he's going to be a great fantasy player. I understand there's like some upside potential with him, but given that he's completely unproven, I'm not going to, unless you have an IR spot you can dump him in. There's really no reason to hold him for 3 weeks. I mean, you should be at this point in the season, especially, you should be moving through players quickly and trying to find gold, so sitting on an injured player that's never proven they've been good before for 3 weeks just doesn't make sense.
All good tips, guys. I want to hear from the audience. Put it in the comments. How did we do? I'm wearing a Goonies shirt, so it's good enough for me. That's what I'm going to say.
Bernie,
about
it's cold outside.
Yeah, and Ross, you got some Pete Rose on.
I got Pete Rose.
Jonesing for baseball.
Yeah, but I'm celebrating that first game.
Listen,
Pete Rose.
We're talking about numbers.
But we're talking about numbers. There's one thing I want to talk about really quick, if you guys don't mind. I want to talk about James Harden. And I know everybody has him. He's in 100% leagues, and it's like a big question mark. What I do with James Harden? I love James Harden. He went to a great university, Arizona State. But this is the dilemma. He didn't like what his owner gave all this money to Trump. So he was mad about that. He wanted to be traded. He made it vocal. Trade me. And they didn't trade him. Then December 5th, he supposed to show up for practice. He was in Vegas, supposedly, at his private practice in Vegas, which is BS, as we all know. That's not true. He was in Vegas partying. There was pictures of him with whatever. So he did that. Now he was at another party, and he was to be a team leader in the NBA. People look up to him. He's like a leader in the NBA, just not on his team, but in the NBA. What kind of example is this guy giving the NBA? Not doing the rules, going to parties without masks. He's giving such a bad example. So I'm just coming back to, if I have James Harden on my team, do I try to trade him with a high value? Do I keep him? Or if I have a team and I want James Harden, can I get him cheap? That's a good question. It's a good time to talk about it. If you're in a league and you want James Harden on your team, this could be a good time to trade for him. So that's what I'm throwing out there.
Yeah, it's probably a better time to trade for him than to trade him away, honestly, because just given everything that's going, all the negative headlines that have been going on with him, I think people might be cautious to give up the kind of value that he's proven that he has every single year, So if I was going to trade him, I would wait till he has 1 or 2 really great games first and then trade him.
There you go. That's what I wanted to hear, Andrew.
Great insights, and I'm probably going to have to hold on to him. I backed into owning him in the first place. But I do agree with you. I also think that his beard makes him look like he's like from the late 1800s, and he's like around a campfire and he's missing teeth. I don't know. It looks strange with that huge beard. I've never been a Harden fan, and I ended up owning him. Great insights, guys. If you haven't already, please click subscribe, click like, ring the bell for notifications. We have Waiver Wire coming every week, coming to you same day, Thursdays, and we will bring you more information as we gather all the information on the minutes and everything else. Thank you for watching.